You see, over 10,000 American lives are credited with having been saved by the actions of over 4,000 working dogs and their handlers. The fact that virtually every military working dog was left behind in Vietnam is a sad part of our military history. And to be honest with you, it's the only time that I've ever worn the uniform that I wanted to take it off. I'm Jim Huggins. I'm the president and a producer and director at New Shepard Films. I'm also privileged to be part of the Valorous TV Advisory Board. I'm also a veteran of the United States Air Force, and to be perfectly honest, I'm also a disabled veteran. I think that as any Medal of Honor recipient, or at least anyone that I've ever heard, will tell you they don't really deserve the medal. They don't deserve that honor. It's the other people who didn't make it that do. Widening the story for Forgotten Heroes helps honor, I think, the individuals that were also involved in that action. But it also was important to widen the story to include the dogs. You see, over 10,000 American lives are credited with having been saved by the actions of over 4,000 working dogs and their handlers. What we wanted to do was highlight the importance of the bond between the handlers and the dogs. Without that, the effectiveness of the scout dog teams wouldn't have been there. German Shepherds have always been a part of my life, and certainly military service has as well. I've always respected the military handlers that worked out in the fields, and I first became aware of them back in the early to mid 80s when I was on active duty myself. But as I learned more about military working dogs and their handlers, the training that they had to go through and so forth, I learned about the story of Robert Hartsock. In fact, I learned about Bob and his sacrifice back in the late 80s. This was long before I had any desire or imaginings of being a film producer, but I always filed away that at some point in time, that story had to be told. I had to let people know about the importance of Bob Hartsock, of his dog Duke, of their actions in Vietnam, as well as what that meant to today. See, this happened back in the past. This was back in 1969. At the time I learned about the story, well, 20 years had passed and still nobody knew about it. So when the opportunity came up through New Shepard Films to be able to tell stories, this was already at the top of the list. As we were going through developing the story, I think probably the biggest surprise I had of the effectiveness of the military working dogs is that they had a bounty placed on their heads. See, you can always tell how important an asset is to your enemy when they try to take it out. They try to deny you that capability. I learned very early on that all of these dogs and their handlers had bounties placed on their heads, and it depended on where they were in country as to how much that bounty was. As we went through the interviews with a number of the people that were involved back in Vietnam, we learned that one individual, the dog didn't make it very far off of the helicopter. They took the dog and the handler out shortly after they were deployed into the field. That's probably the biggest surprise. Looking back at it now, it really shouldn't have been, because like I said, the enemy places value on assets that hurt them the most. Dogs were at the top of the list. See, as I mentioned a minute ago, German Shepherds have been around in my life for a long time. In fact, I have a service dog. His name is Apollo. He's a hearing dog. He guides me through my world because I have a challenge with being situationally aware of where things are, like cars, for example, or people. So I understand that bond. I understand that relationship. And if I don't, I'm going to miss something and become a hood ornament. Out in the field, though, that bond has to be very, very strong. That's a key element of military working dogs. That's a key element of being effective at their job. So as a filmmaker, I already understood that. It already made sense. And so from that standpoint, it was actually easy to get that point across in the story, or at least I feel like it was. Not everybody gets that, and that's a challenge, because that's a key part of the story. It's a key part of their effectiveness, and that relationship needed to come through. The other aspect that helped was getting to know a number of the handlers within the 44th IPSD. His friends, his colleagues, basically the men that he saved, all expressed the same sentiment, both with their dogs and in their observance of working with Bob and his dog Duke. I think at the end, and I'm not going to give away the ending of the documentary, you need to watch it, but I think the end, as told by Lamar Smith, the vet tech, is probably as poignant and powerful as anything I'd ever heard. The fact that virtually every military working dog was left behind in Vietnam is a sad part of our military history. And to be honest with you, it's the only time that I've ever worn the uniform that I wanted to take it off. Once I learned that, I found it was horrific. And the excuses given, not even close to being plausible. When you hear about, when you read about, and when you talk to fellow handlers who witnessed the dogs being put in kennels and their handlers being dragged off of the kennels to be put on planes, but the kennels left behind, that's horrendous. And in my mind, unforgivable. So less than 200 dogs are thought to have made it back to the United States, and that number is uncertain. We have no idea how many really did. But to have taken those dogs that gave everything, those dogs that had bonds with their handlers that are unbelievable, and leave them in country where essentially they would be considered a delicacy on the menus at times, I just cannot believe we did that. And like I said, that's the only time I've ever wanted to take the uniform off and have nothing to do with my service. I didn't want to be perceived as having ever endorsed that. But the key point is, that's probably the hardest part of the story to have told, is to imagine those dogs being turned loose into the jungles or left on the tarmac in their kennels, and their handlers being forcibly put on planes to leave for the United States. I've talked with a number of handlers personally that would have preferred to have stayed with their dogs and faced the North Vietnamese. For me, the fundamental part of the story for Forgotten Heroes is one simple concept. No greater love hath a man than he lays down his life for another. Sounds simple, but what does that really look like in practice? I know that Christ did that for us, but what about anybody else? Can you walk up to a stranger and willingly lay down your life for them? I don't know about you, but I have a hard time with that concept. Most Medal of Honor recipients didn't. That's what they did. So part of telling the story of Forgotten Heroes was to give an example of one person who, without hesitation, gave his life so that others may live. That's a tough thing to do, but that's what the story is about. And if it inspires somebody else to look at their fellow brother or sister on this planet and be willing to sacrifice, well, that's a home run.